Hi, welcome to part two of the crucifixion date. So now you know how the Hebraic calendar works. Now we need to, there's a couple videos that we'll need to watch. So you should go to the link below as usual. It'll open up this PDF, and you always have my permission to download as well for your own usage. So if we go, zoom in here for our crucifixion date, our crucifixion timeline, click on that, and so these videos here are extremely important. Let me just download it here so I can zoom in better. Okay, has better zooming properties downloaded. All right, so this here, there's a couple videos. So this video here is by Tomorrow's World. You click on it. If you don't feel comfortable clicking on it, just do a search Tomorrow's World and look for the video 3 days and 3 nights. Just a disclaimer, I've gone on their site and just use discretion with their theology, okay? But they do a good job with this video, 2 days, 2 nights. And you'll notice in the video they have 31 AD. I already showed you that 31 AD is not possible in part 1. That's based on the calculation method. Nissan 14 fell on a Monday that month, alrighty, using the method that the Jewish people used at the time. And therefore, it just was not possible. That was 31 AD, alrighty. So, and then this other video here, now that one, they used the Gospels, okay, get verified a 3 day, 3 night prophecy.
Is on the
And then this one here by 119 Ministries with the Last Supper Passover meals on YouTube. So they do a thorough job tying the Old Testament prophecies pertinent to Passover, Jesus being the Lamb, to the Hebraic calendar. They also go through the Gospel as well. And what's nice about this video, where it's difficult to resolve the issue between like John's Gospel versus the Matthew, Mark, and Luke's Gospel, they walk you through how they're able to resolve it, which is why this video is so awesome. So one of the reasons why anyway. So after you're watching these videos, you'll recognize, okay, Jesus had to die on this in 14, and according to the Gospel, it had to be on a Wednesday, and the precision level that we're working with is to the hour, based on John. Let's see here. Let me pull up that verse. Let's see here. I need to find that verse here. Yeah, right here. Just bear with me. This is very important that we understand this. That's why I'm taking the time to do this. So this is the precision level that our Lord required. Jesus answered, "Are there not 12 hours in a day?" Okay, so we are to work with the precision level down to the hour. Alrighty, and so that's the level of precision that I'll be working with throughout the rest of this video. So now that we know precision level down to the hour, and you watch these videos, now you recognize, okay, it absolutely has to be on Wednesday, April 5th in the Gregorian calendar of 30 AD, and or of the Julian calendar, and then April 3rd of the Gregorian calendar. I have listed both. So yeah. So now we need to verify based on history. I'm going to actually zoom way out, way out, and then we're going to zoom in closer to 30 AD date. So this is Solomon's temple right here when it's being built. So we're way back in history here, but I would like to point out to you the source that I use to come up with the start date, 458 BC. Alrighty. Start year, I should say, that the end of 7 weeks starts, and then that brings us up to the crucifixion. So here's the timeline source from this endpoint to this endpoint here in the timeline. It's built based on this source here. So if you click on it, or if you feel more comfortable just looking it up, it's the prophecy of Daniel's 970 weeks, distorted by Jewish chronology. Look that up, Fortin.org, and they walk you through it step by step, and really good. I mean, they did an awesome job. So after you do that, now you recognize 458 BC as the start year. We start there, and we add 49 years for the first 7 weeks, and the 434 years for the following 62 weeks, and then 3.5 years get us to the midpoint of that week, and that brings us to 30 AD. Then again, and then check it based on the videos based on these videos here I portrayed, that I point out to you, and go through the years using the method I showed you. Don't use the calculation method. That's just not what they used in the first century. Alrighty, and you will be able to confirm that yes, it was 30 AD. Alrighty, so now we have so this here, this red line here, 3.5 years, representative of the 3.5 years on this timeline. Okay, so the endpoint of this here, the Passover 30 AD. All right, this is start at 6 a.m. on this one 14. Why 6 a.m.? Because in the Hebraic calendar, that's the midpoint of that day. So being 6 a.m. the midpoint of that day, Wednesday the midpoint of that week, then we protrude the 3.5 years from there. But that's how we get this red line here, 3.5 years. That's what it represents. So we know that's Passover, and then 1 year earlier was another Passover, John 6:4. In the prior year, John did not mention anything about the Passover, but he did mention feasts. Okay, and when you read the feast, he doesn't tell you what they are, but reading the context, it's Feast of Harvest. And so, interestingly, Jesus pointed out, that there's 4 months comes to harvest. Okay, so what I did was I placed those 4 months in here. I was trying to figure out, okay, where does this fit between this Passover and this Passover? And it strongly suggests it's actually at the very midpoint of his ministry. Alrighty, let me download this again. I can zoom in better. Sorry. I recognize some of you are probably looking through your cell phone. You need a big monitor to be able to work with the PDFs, really. You probably figured that out on your own. So I realized, I see that green line here is the length of 4 months, okay? And I realized it must be at the midpoint of the ministry, and sure as heck, the beginning of those 4 months, May 4th, is to be considered late spring, and end at September. So here's an article about that, the history of it. Now we use machines today, so we do things a little differently, but they did everything by hand back then. So you're more than welcome to read through this. And if you don't feel comfortable clicking on the link, just do a search Bible tools, what the Bible says about Feast of Harvest. Okay. And then we go previous Passover, John 2:13, 27 AD. That brings us exactly this point here. And 7 verses later, it mentions about this 46 years of the temple. Alrighty, it took them 46 years to build it. So from this point here, I do a line 46 years in length from here on back in this timeline here, and that's how we get to this right here. Here, let me zoom in here. Alrighty, so that this point right here, 46 years in length, and you can see it lands between 20 and 19 BC. So now we need external evidence to prove that, right? So go to here, oops, and sure as heck, according to Jewish Encyclopedia, 19 and 20 BC. Alrighty, so that works out beautifully. And then we continue going to the left. We have Luke 3:1. There are 6 months time span between here and here. So we have Luke 3:1, and where it mentions about the reign of Tiberius Caesar. And so, so when I take draw 15 years length of a line from here to the endpoint of here, it brings us to 11 AD. Now, we all know that Tiberius did not officially start until 14 AD. So why the discrepancy? So if we click on here, he was actually co-regent with Augustus in late 11 AD. Alrighty. So now why is that? Now this is somebody that basically calls the shots. Okay. And from what I read in history, there's tension between the two, but that kind of beside the point. So somewhat, obviously he's calling the shots, and he's not agreeing with it. Augustus not agreeing with Tiberius and everything he's doing. But so this is what Luke was actually going by in the beginning of his reign, not the official date that Augustus Caesar died, but the official year that Tiberius actually started his reign. Alrighty. So what can explain that? One, worried about being assassinated. All right, there. So you click on this link here, it kind of goes over the history of that. So if you do Britannica search Augustus, Roman Emperor, it should come up, and it goes over that. So yeah, and there are probably some other reasons why we don't know. Maybe health reasons that's not really been publicized. There are other reasons why Tiberius started a few years before he actually died. But again, it did not become official until 14 AD, but that's not what Luke is going by, obviously. When we start piecing all this together, he's going by the actual time that Tiberius was in control. So now we go to the right of the crucifixion, and a couple days before the crucifixion, the Olivet Discourse, where Jesus was given a prophecy concerning the destruction of the temple. And so we need to know how long a generation is. Remember, Jesus said, this generation not pass away until all these things take place. Now, so when we say a generation, throughout the length of time, now obviously pertaining to people, okay, but there's a length of time that's associated with it, okay. So when we say a generation in our culture, it's typically 20 years, okay. So if we go back to Genesis 15, to them at that time, a length is about 100 years. But then time went on, you get to Numbers, then it's 40 years, alrighty. And so the Lord's anger burned against Israel, and he made them wander in the wilderness 40 years, until the entire generation of those who had done evil in the sight of the Lord was destroyed. So when we add 40 years to April 30 AD, we get to April of 70 AD, right? Which, now there's also Psalm 95:10 as well, which is after Numbers 40 years. So twice it mentions that a generation 40 years, and there's no change in Numbers until the time Jesus and the disciples have this conversation. So you have to stick with that number that they were familiar with, 40 years. Okay, so unless obviously between Psalm and their conversation and it changes again, then you have to go with that number. But this is the latest, the two latest. Already 40 years. So when we add 40 years to 30 AD, we arrive to April 70 AD, and we get to this here. Interesting fact: the siege of Titus began April AD 40, year to the week from the time of crucifixion. Now, Josephus wrote April 7th, but that's based on the Julian calendar, and that falls on a Friday. Okay, so this here, the April 7th, it's on a Friday. Now, why would he think that would happen on a Friday? If you watch the video, these videos here, they go over the High Sabbath, which is the annual Sabbath. It happens once a year, and it starts at the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And so when they're having a conversation, the people the following week after Jesus died, people are talking about, oh, he died, he rose from the dead, and they say, yeah, he died before the Sabbath. It's fresh in their minds that, yeah, obviously it's the High Sabbath because Nisan 14 was on that Wednesday right before the High Sabbath, so they knew clearly this is the Sabbath they were talking about. But as time goes on and weeks go by, then they're going to, all likely forget about the High Sabbath and be thinking about the weekly Sabbath that you and I were all familiar with. And that's on a Saturday, so naturally it's just a matter of time where, okay, it must be on a Friday, and that's all due to communication hearsay, and it just naturally goes through the cycle uh, of error, and no surprise, people will start believing it's on a Friday. You also have the transition between Julian calendar and Gregorian calendar, where they used Julian back then. So when somebody says to somebody who's familiar with the Gregorian calendar, like you and I, April 5th, they're going to think, oh, April 5th on a Friday. That's another theory as to why people start believing on a Friday. So it's no wonder why so many people believe it on a Friday. I used to too. And the problem is, you believe it on a Friday, it's going to blind you from the beauty, and I mean the beauty of Daniel's 70th week. And unfortunately, it has been flipped upside down today by the large majority of Christians into thinking it's something else. So we won't get into that. But anyway, so that confirmed both sides the date of 30 AD. Alrighty, and just let me just state this again. Yes, it's 40 years, but the generation pertinent to people. So you have that time frame, 40 years, but it still has to do with the people. So right immediately after the 40 years, that very week, again, that very week is when the siege began, and Daniel chapter 9, verse 26, 27 refers to the flood and refers to the pouring. Okay, that is the siege. It's not water; it's the flood of soldiers coming in. They're after the gold and the precious metals. The temple burning, and they're in a rush, kind of outdo each other to get to the gold and metals, and they're just slaughtering the women and children along the way. But there were hiding places though. And so some survived that flood, but eventually many were held captive by Caesar at the end. So anyway, so hopefully this all makes sense. So there's a couple links here for basic believing why Jesus died in 30 AD, and I think that pretty much covers it. So yeah, again, this PDF, so you can use it, but you're obviously going to need a big monitor. It's pretty difficult to use on your cell phone, so I recognize that. More and more people using cell phones, but you obviously need a big monitor. It's really hard to get a lot of information in a small space. So anyway, hope you found this video enjoyable, the information, and beneficial. And there are other links to verifying 26 AD for beginning Christ ministry. Okay, so you click on any one of these. So, alrighty. Well, thank you very much, and hope you have an awesome day. Thank you.